Hey folks, this time we've got a replay from Psykmoe and Emmy and Atomizer platooned up on Malinovka. Psykmoe and Emmy are in the Pershing, probably one of the most solid all-round medium tanks in the game, while Atomizer is in the T-28 GMC, not the T-28 Proto. So Atomizer's got a decent setup for this. He can just shoot from a distance across the map and let his armor do a lot of the work. Psykmoe and Emmy are going to be basically his eyes, as well as being a flexible fire support around the map. Now interestingly, Psykmoe heads west immediately out of spawn, not to the east up the hill like most medium players, including myself, usually would. Now, east or south spawn, whichever you want to call it, doesn't have the advantage for pushing up this side road. In fact, it's at a pretty major disadvantage. And so that's not what Psykmoe is actually doing. What he's doing is just waiting to see what drives into those bushes. Oh look! Though he misses the KV-85, he does spot both those tanks. The Comet suicides like an idiot, achieving absolutely nothing since those tanks were already lit. His work here done, having lit two enemy tanks in that position, Psykmoe then decides to turn back and begin heading up the hill with Emmy. Atomizer meanwhile has pulled right back and is shuffling around in the sort of back area of spawn there. If you look at actually the render box drawn off Psykmoe's tank at the moment, Atomizer's position has render all the way into the enemy base right up to their cap, so there's no reason for him to be any further forwards really. At that point he's just risking getting spotted and then blown up, particularly by Artie. The further back he sits, the safer he is, but in fact it looks like he's actually shifting east to fire across the village area. Again, Emmy and Psykmoe are doing things a little bit differently here. Instead of heading up the hill, they're actually hanging around this sort of bowl here, which is a pretty decent position. It's only really risky once you expose your left side driving just in front of where Psykmoe is now, or if there's a lot of enemy stuff hanging over the side of the hill, which is in turn dangerous for them, so often it's quite a decent position. It's just a case of whether or not there's anything actually here for you to shoot at. Psykmoe and Emmy are playing things pretty slowly at the moment. Not a bad decision considering that the game's still pretty young. And the teams are roughly equal, maybe not quite. Actually a tier 6 and a tier 7, and the tier 7 being a suicidal bad, and that probably is a fair trade for a tier 8 heavy. But in any case, there's no point rushing things. It's how you make mistakes and get blown up. So for now, Psykmoe and Emmy are content to just control this bowl, get spots where they can, and maybe snap off a shot if they have the chance to do so without getting blown up. You can really see Psykmoe using the terrain here, same with Emmy. This whole area is a very large bowl shape. Obviously it slopes down towards the water, but on the other sides there are ridges that protect you, so if you're in a tank like the Pershing, which has excellent gun depression, you can really dominate this position. Friendly Artie is making a pretty good account for himself at the moment. And now Psykmoe begins to push up. Again, we notice that this terrain here is another bowl. It's actually part of the same general area, just sort of there's a small ridge between these two fields, and then another ridge between this and the next one. This whole village sort of field area of the map is a series of sort of scalloped parts of the terrain. I'm not good at words at the moment, but you can see what I mean for yourselves. There's lots of dividing hills that cut it up into little slices, and you can sort of pop over, shoot from hold down, move into the next one where you're covered, shoot from hold down, and just push up like that. It's a nice area to push up. The only main concern is you can't do it if the enemy are firing from the hilltop at you. You also have to be careful with artillery because there's not really any cover down there from it. Psykmoe moves into the village. He knows that there's not really much threatening on that hill. There is something very threatening in front of him by the church, though. Psykmoe manages to push across. He does get spotted, but he's in cover before anybody can react to it. And now he's in a very difficult position to get him out of. This spot here under the hill is really, really great. It's even better if you're in a light tank because you can really capitalize on the camouflage in that sort of area there. And also the bushes around those rocks. But even in a medium, even in a big medium like the Pershing, it's still a very, very useful position. Right now, Psykmoe just wants to keep the Roomba spotted, while his teammates attempt to deal with the Comet on the hill. But in fact, the enemy already deals with them. Psykmoe probably could have just poked a little bit higher and got his gun over the hill there to take the shot, but given his hit points and how much damage that thing does, it probably wasn't worth it. But now it's fired, and he has a little time to think. He decides against pushing straight into it while it's on reload, and there's a good reason for that. He doesn't really know what's covering it. Some of the stuff down in the enemy base could be looking this way, the AT-15 could be looking this way, or the T-28 Proto may have relocated at some point. So he waits for a better opportunity, pops out, and manages to track it in the corner, fires, and now it's defenseless. Psykmoe backs off to give his teammates a shot at it. And now that's another threat dealt with. The enemy are getting pretty low on tanks. Psykmoe, Emmy, and Atomizer are all still alive, although Psykmoe and Emmy are missing hit points. And now it's Hardy playing up home. Psykmoe hasn't actually got himself a large amount of damage yet, but just through his positioning and his spotting, he's been able to contribute a pretty decent amount to this match. It's all well and good having a high amount of damage. In fact, it's very good having a high amount of damage, and I try to do it wherever I can, but sometimes you just can't have it all, and you need to do things that aren't throwing your tank away. Spotting and holding positions instead of rushing out in front of enemies to try and get a couple of shots in. Psykmoe manages to put the flank on the other enemy arty there. And in fact, catches both of them unawares. Unlucky hit there for Atomizer. But the arty gets finished off anyway, and now it's just the enemy T-32 that he's cleaning up. Can't be covered from everyone at once, and so he's exposed himself from Psykmoe in his efforts to screen his side from the T-29. Atomizer delivers a killing blow, and there we have it. A pretty cruisy platoon match on Malinovka. Two mediums, both Pershings, both have good capabilities in this kind of terrain, both played by exceptionally good players that know how to use their tanks, and supported by Atomizer in a big hunk of steel with a big gun. Not a lot that can really go wrong in this, other than puppies, that is. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I do know that the Malinovka ones get a bit tiresome because the map's been in the game since, basically, ever since I've started playing it. It's been in since beta, possibly earlier, well, probably earlier in fact, but you know, with the periodic changes to the map, and particularly with people who play it a bit differently than me, like Sipolepis in his 430 and like Psykmoe in his Pershing, hopefully it's not quite as repetitive as it might otherwise be. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.